Here we go.
Do it.
Okay, cool.
Here we go.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Coffin Talkin', where we unravel the mysteries, embrace the peculiar, and find humor in the unconventional world of funerals and death. I'm Holly. I'm here with Frank.
Also known as Nelson. Thank you very much.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, great. I know for a fact that's not true.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes, but here I am. Thank you very much. It's great to be with you again. And hopefully that the last couple of episodes, we've had some great comments on, and can't really believe that the stuff like that is happening, but there it is. It's
I know.
out there.
I
It is
can't believe
happening.
that people tolerate us enough to want to listen and keep coming back.
Well, according to everyone that I hear, it's not the stories, it's Holly's voice they love to hear.
Oh, great. Well, welcome to my podcast where I will be telling the stories now.
All right. Thanks, Holly. What story are you telling us today? Let's be Holly.
Today is a story about Nelson.
Oh,
you guessed it.
I'm a cat woman.
Oh, no.
Okay. So otherwise, how was your week?
It was great.
Good.
2 things to share. Number 1, I was just talking to Mom about this, but Dune Part 2, we went and saw it. The most incredible movie I think I've ever seen. Oh my gosh. The cinematography and the storyline and all the actors and actresses were incredible.
Wow.
So highly recommend. But for the more important part is I'm pretty sure my husband and I stole this week without knowing it. So we were going out and we were going to Joanne Fabric because I embroider. And so I needed some new embroidery thread. Yep. So we were in the neighborhood and we thought, let's just stop at Yogurtland. And if you don't know what it is, Yogurtland is just a frozen yogurt place. So we walk in, it's probably like 11:30, 11:45. We walk in and the store's empty and we're like, oh my gosh, good. We have it to ourselves. So we go up, grab a bunch of sample cups, sampling everything, decide what we want to get. And then we start filling up our little cups with the frozen yogurt. And at this point, no one has come out to the front. So we're just
they probably thought the door is locked, Holly.
They probably did. Because we get over to put the toppings on our yogurt and everything is locked down and there's no spoons and you can't even like touch the toppings or anything. And so my husband checks his phone, checks the hours, and it opened at noon. So we were in there and it was closed.
Oh my gosh.
So we just really quickly threw away our yogurt and just like ran out.
Did you wait for the anticipating opening of the door? Open.
Oh my gosh. We should have, but I think that we're probably bound for life or on some sort of flagged system now.
You probably are flagged on their security system.
Yeah.
Oh, let those 2 in. Yeah. Oh, you again. Got it.
Oh, great. Here for some more free samples. They're always free, but we did take like 10 cups, 10 little sample cups.
Oh. So
how was your week?
It was good. We're still very busy, but the thing that I liked the most was what happened on, was it Friday with Stephanie Donovan?
Yes, we have some very exciting news. Is this past Monday, we recorded and we did a collaboration with a different podcast. It's with Stephanie of the Multidimensional Mom Podcast. And she was incredible. So she has posted this past episode with us where Frank just talks about, the funeral industry, does some Q&A sort of things, and does share a couple of stories. And it was so much fun.
She's a great host.
Yeah, she is a great host. So we're going to put her link and everything that you can do to find her podcast and that episode in our episode description. So check that out after you listen to this one and head over and give Stephanie some love because it was so much fun.
It was fun. And I meant it. Stephanie, if you're listening, I meant it when I said, Stephanie, we now count you as a friend.
It's true.
Yeah.
You really do. Yeah. She's just super personable, a great host.
Yep. It was good so anyway, that was a highlight and probably all I really want to say about the week. It was good.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, it was really good.
That wraps it up. Okay, well then we'll just jump in and let's be frank.
Thanks, Holly.
Yeah.
So I want to start by having you go in a frame of mind, and let's just say you're a parent with a child, and how difficult would that be to bury a child?
Oh my God.
Or to have a child pass away?
I think that would be the hardest thing in the world.
Yeah, I think it would be, and I have a hard time putting myself in that, and I never want to be that type of a person where I say, "Oh yeah, I can understand what you're going through," and I could never.
You just can't until you've gone through it.
And so I just want you to take for just a minute and think for a moment about the story I'm about to tell you is about a young father who came in and specifically asked to see caskets. Didn't want to know anything about funeral arrangements, anything like that. He just wanted to see caskets.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I was thinking about that and then showing him all sorts of different caskets, the differences between metal and wood, the differences in the different thickness, and we've talked about the thickness of the gauge of metal and what that means and the duration of the metal itself. The conversation ended, and he said, "Well, thank you very much for your help." And then he wanted to go ahead and leave. And then he said, "Would you mind if I called on you in a couple of days?" I said, "No, that would be great." And so he left, and I didn't think really too much about it until about 4 days later. Might have been 5 working days that he came back into the building, and he asked for me specifically. And so we sat down, and I remembered his first name, luckily, and I called him by his first name. And he said, "I'm surprised you remember me." And I said, "Well, the only reason truly the thing that caught me off guard was that you just came in asking for a casket. No services, nothing to be planned on." And he goes, "Well, can I sit and talk with you for a little bit?" And so in that small little bit of interchange, we talked back and forth, talking about what we were doing in life, what my expectations of my own life would be, and what might transpire if I had to change my plans, what they might be. And so anyways, after all these conversations, all these questions, I just looked at him and said, "Why all the questions?" And he goes, "Well," he said, "I kind of like to, right now I'm living vicariously through other people with children," and I didn't have children at the time, but he said, "But I like to know what your plans are because my daughter is dying." And I just went really quiet. And I what do you say when someone says that their daughter is dying? Well, my next question to him, after the statement of how sorry I was that she was passing away, I said, "So how old is she?" And he said, "She's 17 and she probably won't live to be 18. And I said, "Wow. Okay. I'm so sorry to hear that." So he said, "I just wanted to make sure that the casket would be available, and I'll talk funeral stuff with you when she passes away. And I don't know when that will be, but I will call you." I said, "Okay, I'm sorry." And so he left. And it's not that I didn't think about it. I didn't focus on that conversation for a long time. And about 2 months later, 3 months later, I get this call. And he's very stoic on the phone. And he just mentions, "Frank, I talked with you a couple of months ago. My daughter has passed away." And I said, "Oh, I am so sorry." And so we made arrangements for a vehicle to get to where he was located with his daughter, and then to go ahead and transport her back to the mortuary. And he gave me permission to embalm her while I was at the house with him. And so as soon as I got back, I did the embalming, and he came in, was scheduled to come in the following day. So he came in and we sat down and we started making the arrangements of the funeral for his daughter. And he told me which casket he wanted to use. And then he began to outline the services that he wanted. There were going to be singers, some people singing, and then the flowers that he wanted, how he wanted people to be seated. And I kind of likened it to a wedding, a reception where people are assigned specific seats.
Oh,
okay. But he said it was very important that let's say there was 5 or 6 couples, that they be seated up front. It was very important. And I said, okay, no problem. We can do name markers if you want. We can just put reserved ropes over the seats. And then as they come in, identify themselves as people being for the reserved seating. It can all be worked out. So anyway, the day came for the service, and his daughter looked beautiful. I mean, I couldn't see specifically what might have caused her passing, but she did look good. They had a nice dress for her and everything. But the interesting thing is he bought this nice casket, and I always cringe when people buy a nice wood casket only to know that it's going to be cremated at the end. And and we've done this with cherry woods before, and I just think, you're spending so much money for the casket and that you're going to turn around and cremate it. Okay. So literally that is burning money in my estimation. Right. Anyway, the services went along and everything was just absolutely beautiful. They did a balloon launch at the end where everyone that was wanting to could write a little note, tie it to the balloon string, and then allow that to go skyward for like a final message for this young lady. And so we had all finished this, and he said to me something that kind of caught me off guard. He said, "Frank, when will she be cremated?" And I said, "Probably tomorrow, maybe the next day at most is when she'll be going to the crematorium and will be cremated." And he said, "Fine, I have a specific request for you." And I said, "What is that?" And he said, "I would like to know if it's possible that you take her out of the casket and cremate her in something different and allow me to take the casket home." And I was just thinking to myself, okay, again, kind of an odd request, but okay. Now, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. His wife had actually passed away probably, if I'm thinking back correctly, probably about 2 years before the actual service of this daughter that we just had services on.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she was killed in an auto accident, if I remember correctly. And so we went on ahead and had the services for this one daughter. And I just remember how kind of quaint, almost brought a tear to my eye to see 3 young women sitting there with their father in the front pew, paying honor to their sister and their daughter and his daughter. And I just kept thinking, man, how do you go forward from here?
Yeah, from 4 to 3.
18 years old roughly, and each of the other children were, because she was the oldest, so they were younger than 18 years old, of course. And so I just remember dwelling on that for just a little bit, and then I just focused forward and fast forward when he requested that the casket remain with him. And I didn't really think much about it until he said, "I'm sure that you will want to know why I want the casket." And you try and play the as a funeral director, the level field, like, "Oh no, this happens all the time." That type of a feeling.
Right. Like, it's not a weird request.
Yeah. So I was playing that part where, yeah, no, it's okay. You don't need to explain anything to me. And so the time went, he came by with a truck and picked up the casket. And about 4 days later, maybe a little less, maybe 3, we had the cremated remains present or ready for him to pick up. So I called him and I asked him to please come over and at his convenience to go ahead and bring his daughter into his care, his daughter's cremated remains. He came over and he shook my hand, gave me a hug, and he said, "I just want you to know that I feel like I need to tell you what's happening." And I said, "What is that?" And he goes, "My daughter has," and I looked it up because I couldn't remember the exact name of it, but it's idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And I said, "Oh, what is that?" And he goes, "Well, it's where the tissue or the lungs begin to get scarring at a certain age." And he says, "We don't know, the doctors don't know what causes it, but the lungs start to scar, creating them less time or harder time breathing."
Right.
And as time progresses, once it's been diagnosed, at least at that point, I think the life expectancy was between 1 and 3 years. And so he said, so that's eventually what took my daughter. And that's what I know. And I said, "Well, I'm so sorry." And he said, "Wait just a moment." And he goes, you met my 3 other daughters?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "It's a congenital thing. So they each have been already diagnosed with scar tissue in their lungs."
Oh my
And I
God.
just looked at him and he goes, "You know what that means, right?" And I said, "I know exactly what that means." And so he said, "Now you know why I want to keep the casket, because now when my next daughter dies, I will be placing her in that casket. And we'll be doing the same thing with each one that passes away. And the last one, when she dies, she'll be cremated in that casket." And I just thought to myself, "Oh my gosh, what do you say now? How do you move forward now? How do you just give the guy a hug and you just say, 'Oh wow, I hope life's better for you'?" And
Right.
so I just kind of thought to myself, well, man, here's a guy whose pride and joy was his family, or is his pride and joy, and his wife was so proud of his daughters or their daughters that he said, where she's at right now, I know that she probably understands what's happening with the daughters, but I don't. And we had no idea when she passed away that this was something that was already occurring in the lives of our children until we just thought they had asthma.
Right.
And so anyway, after explaining that to me, recognizing that would eventually happen, well, about 2.5 years later, I got a call and his second daughter had died.
Oh
And
my God.
and so he said, "Well, I know this." He says, "I've been trying to prepare myself for this." But he said, I can't believe that this is happening to our family." And so we went on ahead, kind of basically the same type service we had for the first daughter, and went on ahead and cremated her. And he came in, and he had already designed an urn that would carry all 4 cremated remains. And so I said to him, I said, "Well, isn't it a little scary for the other 2 daughters to recognize that their names are already placed on the urn?" And the third youngest, or the third oldest, however, second youngest, made a comment to him and said, "No, it makes me excited because I'll see my sisters again." And so anyway, we went on ahead and had the second burial or cremation services, second cremation on the second sister. And then, I'm not kidding, 4 weeks later, we got another call.
4 weeks?
Yeah, it was less than a month, about the third daughter dying. And man, I'm getting all choked up about it again. So each time he would call and ask us to go to the house and retrieve the casket because he didn't have the wherewithal to carry the casket. And so we would bring it to the mortuary and make sure that all those plans were actually being designed the way he wanted and what he wanted to have actually happen. And so the good thing, I guess, if there was to be a good thing out of this, is how close he became to each of his daughters as he would recognize the symptoms and would recognize what was transpiring and what was causing it, that he had that opportunity to actually be that much closer to them. So when the third one passed away, he just looked at me and he held up his hands like this, and he had both fingers crossed, and he said, "Everything's looking great for number 4. She hasn't shown any signs.
Oh.
Everything seems to be looking good." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I do hope that nothing transpires, that she remains healthy." At this point, she was 15. And so this is about the age when all of the others started to show signs. So he was very optimistic about it. And I said goodbye to him. He said, "Can you keep the casket here?" Because he said, "I don't want to, bring a foreshadowing into the home now. If she's so healthy, I don't want her to go look at that casket in our garage all the time and think, well, I'm soon going to be in that."
Yeah.
And so I said, no, that's fine. We'll hold it right here. You've purchased it. Whatever you decide to do with it, just let me know. And we'll either destroy it, or if you want to donate it to someone else, I'll just let them know the circumstance behind it. And we can go that route as well, which is possible, by the way. You just have to disclose everything. So he said that would be fine. So it went on and on. I got a transfer to Arizona to continue working in the funeral industry. When the week I was transferred, I got a phone call.
No.
And it was from him telling me that his fourth daughter had died. And so I just went totally white. And I'm just thinking, I have seen this family all the way through four daughters, memorial services, funeral services, their cremations. But yet I was so grateful that I hadn't been transferred yet, that I could still go ahead and take care of that family one last time and do exactly what he would have wanted done for his fourth and final daughter. And so here, as opposed to seeing a man sitting in a pew with 3 daughters to begin with, then 2, then 1, and now just seeing him by himself sitting in the pew, I couldn't help but think in my mind, I'm thinking he's probably thinking to himself, what have I done? Why me? How could we have caught this earlier? But there was no cure for it. So once you're diagnosed with it, it becomes I don't want to call it a death sentence, but it is.
It's terminal.
There's no way out of it. There's no cure. And so as I was sitting there looking at him and then listening to the service as well, he did something interesting on the final one. He actually asked to speak, and he did speak. And I remember his comments specifically, and he said, families that have been torn apart by this disease are probably angry, and I'm paraphrasing, are probably angry, but I am grateful that it was caught in time and that I would recognize and know what my daughters would be going through so that I could actually help them through the process. And I thought to myself, well, isn't that what we do as funeral homes and as funeral professionals? Don't we help family members through that same process? So once someone passes away, isn't that our ultimate goal, to actually help people through the process of passing from this life to the next? Or once that passing has already occurred, whatever words of encouragement we might be able to offer to family members to help them with that gradual transition as well. So he sat down after speaking, and I made it a point to go up to him and thank him for his word after the service. And he just looked at me and he said, you know what to do, right? And I said, we're keeping her in that casket. He said, yes, we will keep her in that casket if you'll cremate the casket now. And I said, yeah, that is the plan. And that I know we talked about having that done this entire time. So that's fine. We can do that. And then he looked at me and he said, Frank, I just want you to know one thing. I could not have done it without you. And I just looked at him and I said, what do you mean? I mean, I didn't experience any of that. And he said, but you didn't judge me. You didn't ask me what was going on. You went on ahead and you just were really quiet, waiting for me to go ahead and share whatever feelings I was having when my first daughter died. And I said, oh, well, I appreciate knowing that. And he said, I just want you to know that if you keep up that demeanor, that attitude, that people will appreciate you for it. And so I have always, when people come to the funeral home, I don't always ask, because sometimes you get the death certificate and you don't always understand what is on the death certificate as far as the cause of death. I don't understand every bit of terminology, so sometimes I have to look it up. But I just say, I'm so sorry that they have passed away. And then they'll turn around and then they start talking, and then they'll start offering what it is that actually transpired. And I always remember back to him with that simple comment about letting me explain. You didn't pry it from me. I said it at my own pace. And as I was confronting it, or what word am I looking for there, Holly? Anyway, when I was actually conforming to the idea that it was not only taking my first daughter, but it will eventually take all three. And so he just said, thank you so much for just the listening ear. And that he said, that's how it has meant so much to me. That's why we've come back here the 4 times.
Right.
And I told him I was being transferred to Arizona. And he said, when? And I said, in about a week. And he goes, well, and I don't know if he meant to say this way, but he said, well, the timing then couldn't be more perfect. And so that was just, I guess, his way of saying thank you for still being here for my family. Yeah. So anyway, that's today's story. I know it's kind of a downer, but I think that the importance of this story is to let people know that regardless of how hard you think your life is right now, put yourself in his shoes, where you're looking at your daughters and you just know that you may only have them for a couple more years. And you know this in advance, as opposed to, like his wife that was killed not instantly, but within days of the accident. Right. And you could prepare for that too. But looking at and trying to take advantage of every moment of every day to be with your daughters, and recognize that as that cough happens, that, oh crap, here it starts. As the wheezing and wailing start to happen, okay, it's getting closer and it's getting closer to where I'm not going to be able to do anything more for them. And so it's so humbling to the human body. I just look at the human body all the time, and it's a marvelous thing. And yet, once it's disease riddled, and I don't know if it's disease, but if you get that type of a diagnosis that, it's going to be terminal, the human body can shield a lot of things. But once it starts happening internally, it just takes on a whole new sphere of what it is that's taking place within the lives of individuals. And we try and stay away from stories like this, but I just think it's important to note. And the one thing that I'll say here is, regardless of how hard your body or your life may seem, and the truth and the adage is true, that there's always someone with something worse. Mm-hmm. And this is one of those examples where a loving father, you could tell how much he loved his daughters, knew in his mind that he would outlive all of them. And I think that is one of the biggest fears a father or a mother could have anytime, is that I know I'm going to outlive my children. And it's very difficult to know and understand. So anyway, but he kept positive throughout the whole thing. And he was grateful for the time that he had with them. So that is today's story, Holly.
Holy cow. Just ripped my heart out. Oh my God.
I know. And it all started with just coming in to say, can I look at your caskets?
Yeah.
And he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was planning. And I thought that was great wisdom and foresight on his part, to where he wanted to openly ask if the casket could be just saved and not cremated, but because that's a huge expense. If you're paying for one casket, you might as well hang on to it. Yeah. Especially if you know that that's what's going to happen a couple of years down the road, and then again and then again. So rather than keep buying the casket over and over and over, it was. I look back on his wisdom in that regard, and how grateful I was that he had the fortitude to just ask if the casket could be saved.
Right.
So. Yeah. Oh, one other thing that's very interesting that was a little different is on the foot of the casket on the back end. Remember how that casket, when it's closed, would cover the legs? Yeah. Well, every time when the first daughter died, he said, I want it engraved or etched in loving memory of, and then the first daughter's name. And then the second daughter's name went on. And the third name went on. And then the fourth name went on. And so you know what he did? Before his final daughter was cremated, he asked me to remove that foot panel. And he broke it down and then mounted it in a frame, or I don't know how he did it, but it was absolutely beautiful, to where it was just a level piece of wood, and it was framed very nice. And then he had roses, dried roses, that he had attached to the, and I don't know if he did it or if he had someone else do it, but he brought it in so that I could see it. And I said, oh my gosh, what a memory, what a memorial for his daughters. And so, anyway, that's the way he finished it there. And I thought that was a very fitting tribute and something that he could carry from wherever he chooses to be, whatever home he chooses to be in, or wherever he chooses to move. That is something physical that he could take with him, just in memory of his daughters. And so, very interesting. And I thought that he ended it in not just a fashion where someone has cremated someone and then just kept them, but tried to keep them alive to some degree in his home.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I thought I had it together, and then you told me that.
Yeah. So that,
wow.
Very interesting for him and for me to be experiencing that. So anyway.
Yeah, I think that just echoes a lot of what we talked about with previous episodes, is just that death can often become a spectacle.
Right.
I mean, even just the people in his life, I'm sure that is so hard to go through and probably really easy to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it shouldn't be talked about, that shouldn't be shared. That's such a devastating thing that shouldn't be made a spectacle. And you should just take the time to slow down and just listen to this man that's gone through this all, and each one of his daughters as well.
Kind of reminds me back to your class exercise, where you're staring in the eyes of.
Yeah.
When I was thinking of recounting this story, I just thought to myself, I wonder if he took time to just stare at his daughters.
I'm sure he did.
And have that eye-to-eye contact, and whatever could not be said verbally, that it was definitely emotionally felt and shared in that regard. So I hope that he did. I don't know that he did, but I think that would have been a great exercise for anybody, really. If you're in this other situation and you recognize that someone's about to pass away, I think that was so powerful, impactful for when you shared that I think that would be great counsel for anyone to actually take heed to, and just take a moment and stare, and just allow that that transference of spirit to spirit, and allow them the opportunity to know a little bit more about what they're feeling and how they're experiencing life at that very given moment. Well, okay.
Yeah, I think that's a great reminder, and I'm happy to end it there.
Well, one more thing, though, we have to say, shout out once again to Stephanie.
Yes, again, look at our episode description.
She was so nice. I hope that as others ask for additional interviews, that they're as kind as well. Very kind. So once again, thank you, Stephanie. And Big Coffiners, thank you for hanging in there. And please understand that not everything, there are so many different aspects to life that they become magnified and replicated through death. And so some experiences can be funny, some are heart-wrenching, some are horrific or scary. And I'll say horrific because of man's inhumanity to man, but not every story will be something that you'll sit back and say, oh, I'm glad I listened to that. And hopefully everything will eventually say to yourself, yeah, I'm glad I saw that, or I listened to that. I learned something from it. And so that's the purpose of this podcast. I try and we're trying to break all these episodes up into different aspects of life, because we don't want to feel overbearing to everything, like all spiritual, all scary, or dark, or light. But we just want to share the stories that will keep you interested in the podcast and help you keep coming back, and yet still increasing in your wisdom about what's transpiring between here, the hereafter, and things that you might might be experiencing in the near future.
Thanks, Coffners, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.